Okay, so getting back into our coverage over X-Force. You know what, guys, real quick. So I just realized something that when it comes to like our coverage over the X-Men, I always try my best to find like the best reading order to use because with all the different X books that came out around this time for Marvel Comics, it does get a tad bit confusing, trying to cover X-Factor, X-Force, or X-Men, and the list goes on and on. But with that being said, when it comes to X-Force, in one of the reading orders I was following, they like left X-Force off for a good chunk of time. And so when it came to us covering, Apocalypse to 12 or covering Ages of Apocalypse, X-Force just got left behind. And so we do have a few storylines we have to cover as a way to catch up with the rest of the X books that are going on around this time in Marvel Comics. So starting off with X-Force issue number 85, I can kind of tell you right now that this issue is like a one-shot, but at the same time, it's setting up things to come in later chapters for this series. Because as we do get into the opening pages, we pick up with two characters, Locust and also Skid. Now, for Skid, we have seen her for a long time when it came to our coverage over the X-Men. And you know what? She was one of the characters I kind of felt like Marvel did not do her justice because for a good while in the late 80s, she was everywhere. X Factor, New Mutants, and then like by the I want to say early to mid 90s, they kind of just put her on the back burner and just barely brought her back in different books here and there when it came to all the different X books around this time in Marvel Comics. But for Skid and Locust, in an earlier storyline, they had like teleported away. And so for X-Force, they had no idea where Skid or Locust had went to. Well, we kind of find out they're currently locked up in some kind of prison. Now, here's the problem though, because when it came to Locust, when she had opened her portal, she opened that portal inside this prison, allowing someone else to be able to escape. And that would be Pandemonia. And so when it comes to her character, we kind of get this weird vibe that she's some ancient witch that has the ability to put other people under her spell. So just like that, Locust and Skid under her spell in a matter of seconds. Now, I do know that some of you guys are probably wanting to talk more about Pandemonia, right? Like, give you the whole entire backstory of that character. I will here at the end of this chapter because she only appeared twice in X-Force comics. In her first appearance, she was barely seen. So technically, this is her first full appearance in X-Force comics. Now, with that being said, we switch over to Boom Boom. Now, around this time for X-Force, they were no longer working with Cable, kind of on their own, right? Now, when it came to X-Force, thanks to Sunspot getting some money from his dad's company, he was able to kind of secure a place for them to live, kind of their own base at the moment. And so when we do switch over to Boom Boom, we kind of see her right now trying to find Skid. Because like I said, in an earlier storyline, you had Skid and Locust get involved in a storyline with X-Force, but then out of nowhere, they were teleported away thanks to Locust. And so for Boom Boom, she has been looking for Skid. Now she hears a noise downstairs, and when she goes downstairs, she sees other members of X-Force who are currently just passed out, it seems like. But kind of find out that Pandemonia has sent Skid over to their home to get more people under her spell. So just like that, she has gained more members of X-Force under her spell. But now we have to switch over to Cannonball and Danny Moonstar because they were not there. Matter of fact, neither was Jesse, the latest member to the team. And so you have Danny Moonstar and Cannonball just out there, doing some good old running. But it's also Cannonball kind of expressing his concerns because he had left X-Force a while ago, right? And he was able to join the X-Men, became part of the main team, kind of, a graduation for him. Now, the problem was that while he was gone, he saw that his girlfriend Boom Boom had technically moved on to his best friend Sunspot. And he then also kind of got dragged back into his other X-Force mess. It's how to say, you know what? I'll just stick around. But for him, he's kind of like, this is the same X-Force team I was a part of before I left. Now, technically, he's right, but at the same time, he's wrong. And let me explain, because most of the team that he had before he left is still there. But at the same time, some things have changed. You know, Cable is no longer working alongside with X-Force, or, you know, Jesse, this newest member to the team. And yes, you do have your girlfriend right now, or ex-girlfriend, dating your best friend. Matter of fact, you had Danny Moonstar say, like, the main problem for you right now is the fact that you lost Boom Boom. Like, if you had stuck around and been there with her, then most likely she would have moved on to somebody else who is actually there. Now, with all that being said, you didn't have the two meet back up with Jesse and they head back to the base. And so this kind of leads into a short battle between, you know, Pandemonia and also, well, the last three members of X-Force, because when they walk inside, they're like, hey, who in the world had just redecorated our whole entire base? And that's when they're confronted by their fellow teammates, also Skid and Locust, but again, also Pandemonia as well. Now, for Cannonball, he kind of realized they got to retreat. And so he grabbed Eddie Moonstar and Jesse and just fly away. Now, you did have our heroes go over to an occult bookstore to kind of see if anybody there could possibly help them. Now, of course, there's just people running the store who dabble in magic, quotation marks, but not in reality. And so once you do have our heroes leave, they run into another character. And now be a guy known as Benchley. Now for Benchley, he said he knows someone who could actually help our heroes out. And so this kind of leads them over to find a character known as Jennifer Kale. Now Jennifer Kale is a complicated character in a way. Like, she's been around since the 1970s. She first appeared in, I want to say, the Fear issue number 11. That could be wrong. But when it came to her character, she had went through a lot when it comes to magic. And honestly, I would need a whole entire video to just explain the whole idea of her character and how she is connected to so many different people in the world of Marvel Comics, like, for example, Ghost Rider. But anyways, she does dabble in magic. And so it's her being like, hey, I can help you guys bring down this character. Now, it's thanks to Jennifer where we kind of learn, like, the backstory for Pandemonia. And honestly, it's not really that big of a backstory. It's really more the idea that she is a daughter of a lesser Chaos Lord, and that's really it. And she was locked away in a prison in Latveria because she was going around Europe turning different villages into her, like, you know, army of different people under her control, and like made her own kind of hell on Earth. But either way, she was locked away in Latveria. And so when it came to Locust opening up a portal, it allowed her to escape from prison and now try to get back to where she was at. But either way, you do have Jennifer agree to help our heroes bring down Pandemonia. Now, this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline, right? For issue number 85, at least, because you didn't have our heroes being able to locate Pandemonia, and you didn't have Jennifer being able to, one, get rid of her, like, fake form, so showing her more demonic form, but also being able to open up a portal to send her back over to the Chaos Plane. Now, here's the thing, because for this character, we're never going to see her ever again. Like, she does not reappear ever in Marvel Comics. But you did have our heroes being able to send her to the Chaos Plane, one, free their friends from her control, number two. But then at the very end of the battle, we see that for Danny Moonstar, her new powers are kind of going a tad bit wild. Because in her earlier storyline, thanks to the character Arcadia, well, when it comes to Danny Moonstar, she can now basically channel quantum energies. Here's the problem though. It does kind of seem like right now her powers are going a tad bit wild at the moment. But now we have to switch over to Domino. Now for Domino, she has been really trying to investigate the Aguilar Institute. Now, we're still kind of learning more about the Aguilar Institute, but it's Domino want to know a better idea of who they are. And so she had found this doctor who has some small run-ins with the actual Institute because they do some questionable things in the medical field. Like, for example, using people for different kinds of experiments. And so you basically have the doctor show Domino this young girl who has some kind of power. But the thing is that this young girl comes from a town called almost Reno. And so it's him saying, like, she was used by the Aguilar Institute. But this kind of leads us into X-Force issue number 86. Now, as we get into the opening pages for X-Force issue number 86, we do pick up with our heroes right now arriving to almost Reno. And when they do arrive to almost Reno, well, they find the entire town is completely empty. Now, for our heroes, they were here a long time ago in X-Force issue number 77. And matter of fact, that issue right there will be very important for the rest of today's storyline. But as we see our heroes walking around the area, they're kind of like, where are the people? Where's the men, the women, the children? Like, there's no one there. Now, for our heroes, they are then confronted by a random young boy who's literally on fire. Now, you do have Warpath being able to throw the guy away. And when you have our heroes go to check up on the boy, he's dead. Now, it's not because of Warpath, because he literally burned up from the inside out. And so just like that, we get another example of the Institute coming here and doing all these weird kind of experiments on different people in the city. Now, for our heroes, a long time ago in like issue number 77, they were basically told the reason why different children began to pop up with abilities in this city was all because of a nuclear test site that was nearby. And so every single person in town was affected by it. So when they gave birth to children, those children became out with abilities. And so when it came to our heroes being here last time, met a young girl named Mary who was a telepath. Now here's the thing though, because they were also confronted by SHIELD agents who were supposedly there to help protect everyone in town. But now our heroes are going to feel like they were lied to by that group of people. The possibility of those people were not really working for SHIELD, or if they were, SHIELD had flat out lied to them. And so this kind of leads into the idea of the team kind of just going around investigating the entire area, trying to see like, who can they possibly find? Now, unfortunately for Jesse, the latest member to the team, the only thing he finds is a dead body. Like literally, he opens up a cooler or some kind of like, oh my God, what's it called again? A freezer. I don't know why the heck I just like froze there. But when he opened up the freezer, a dead body falls out of there. Now for Domino, she realized that this person was hiding in the freezer to hide from something or someone. Now for the other half of the team, they're still also investigating the entire area. And luckily for them, they do find Mary, the young girl we saw back in issue number 77. But she's not alone. Now, when it comes to the other person that Mary's with, his name is Zach. Now, when it comes to Zach, he's not really like a major character in the storyline. It's not like, okay, cool, here's Zach, we'll see you in a few more issues down the road. No, he only appears in this one single issue, but also his entire body is kind of like Ben Grimm, all rocky, but a different color, of course. Now, we're going to learn later on that his insides are also changing as well. But once you do have this team of X-Force walk into the restaurant, it's kind of cool for Mary because she sees somebody that she recognized, somebody that she thinks will protect her from future danger to come down the road. Now for Domino's team, well, they're still kind of going around the town to see what else they can find. They find this like old beat down building. Once they do open the locks up, there's all this video equipment that tells our heroes like, no, they were watching the people in this town for a very long time. But again, why though? And so this kind of leads into like the ending for this chapter, but not just all the way the ending yet. You'll see what I mean here in a moment, because once you do have Mary explain what happened in the city, that you had one young boy where his power was going to manifest. When his power was going to manifest, he glows so bright that no one was able to look at him anymore. Now he apparently just disappeared. Now when it came to Mary's principal, she sent all the kids home. That is when the same group of supposed SHIELD agents that arrived and going to tell folks, get onto these helicopters. And just like that, one by one of each person in this town began to go on helicopters. That is why the entire town is just completely empty. Now, when it comes to Mary, she says it's only her and Zach, the rock guy, who's currently with her. Now, those same SHIELD agents we saw back in issue number 77, they do reappear. But now we officially know here that they're not part of SHIELD. But the question is now, who are they a part of? And that's when we're introduced to a character known as Odysseus Indigo. Now, for Odysseus Indigo, he's part of a company, or he owns a foundation, better known as, and I'm going to like mispronounce the name, Damade's Foundation. Now, when it comes to his foundation, it was really him trying to supposedly help out the people in the city. Let me explain. You see, again, back in the 1950s, these people were affected by the nuclear age. And so with all that radiation, it left the family in the 1950s without the ability to have, well, children. And here came Odysseus and his foundation. What he did was he gave each of them a mutant gene and a deviant gene, and used both genes to kind of help their kids, one, give them ability to reproduce, but also their children didn't have powers. The problem is that every single child that began to show signs of abilities, those powers begin to kill off their hosts. And so just like that, one by one, children were dying left and right. Now, it was him trying to help bring in the next age of the mutant race, or possibly a combination of mutants and deviants in those children. But again, their powers had killed them off just like that. And so he says, listen, Mary is the only one who has not shown any sign that her powers may possibly kill her. Now, he does leave Mary and Zach with X-Force, but it's him saying, like, I'm not your enemy. What I want to do is help bring in a new age of possible mutants. And then the book ends on that note. Now, for Domino, it does seem like she wants to move on, but can we truly move on from something like this? Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over X-Force. And so with that being said, we're going to pick up with a storyline called Armageddon Now. Now, this was a 4-part story arc, which was pretty huge for the later 1990s going into the 2000s for X-Force. Really for a certain set of characters who were really, affected by this one single storyline. And so as we get into the opening pages for X-Force issue number 87, we pick up 5 years in the past. Now, 5 years ago, we learned here that for Emma Frost, matter of fact, hold on, y'all. 5 years ago, when it came to Charles Xavier, most of the X-Men were kind of grown. And so you had Charles begin the process of trying to use his school as an actual school for mutants again. And so that gave birth to the New Mutants. Now, when it came to Emma Frost, she had opened her own school to kind of rival with Charles Xavier's school. And of course, she had her own students, and they were called the Hellions. Now, by the end of the 1980s, going into the 1990s, well, unfortunately, most of the Hellions were killed off. As a matter of fact, their death is really important for today's storyline. Here's the reason why, because you do have this young boy 5 years ago who was Emma Frost was trying to recruit him for her school. But the young man said, no, I don't want to be used as a pawn in your game against Charles Xavier. And so the young man left. Now, while he was leaving, we learned here that he had a relationship with Taro. Now, when it comes to Taro, she was one of the Hellions that unfortunately had died in the early 1990s of X-Men comics. But we get the idea that she was hoping that he would stay. But unfortunately, again, he says, I do not want to be used as a pawn in the game between Emma Frost and Charles Xavier. And so now we switch over to the present day. Now in the present day, we're picking up with Warpath. Now for Warpath, he was one of the Hellions in the early 1980s for Emma Frost school. The thing was, he was one of the only few survivors of the Hellions. And so for Warpath, ever since then, the Hellions had died. He joined X-Force and became part of the X family, right? Now, for Warpath, he's just waiting for Siryn for, I guess, date night. But then he's confronted by Taro. Now, Taro was one of the few people who had died back when it came to Fitzroy from the future, who came to present day or back in time and killed off most of the Hellions. And so the idea of seeing her here right now is confusing Warpath, because he was told she was dead. Like, she died with some other members of the Hellions. And she's not explaining how she's alive again, but she's here to give Warpath a warning that something big is going to happen. Somebody on his team is going to betray him. But now we have to switch over to Jesse. Now, when it comes to Jesse, all right, so he's the latest member to X-Force, right? But actually, he has been working with Domino to hopefully locate his missing brother, because when his parents had died in a supposed car accident, well, his brother was taken away and never seen again. And matter of fact, he was told, like, your brother is dead. Now, thankfully for Domino, she finds out that Jesse's parents had worked for the National Security Department. And so with that being said, she's kind of like, I found their supervisor who could most likely help us figure out what happened to your brother. Except we kind of find out his name is Dabney Saunders. Now, for Mr. Saunders, here's the thing. He's right now in this retirement home and kind of senile, right? Now, the thing is, when Jesse and Domino walk in and ask like someone nearby where they can find Mr. Saunders, the person they had asked calls somebody else to warn their boss that Domino and Jesse had just arrived looking for Mr. Saunders. But I want to go ahead and move on over to the love triangle between Boom Boom, Sunspot, and also Cannonball. Here's the reason why. Because for Cannonball, he was the first guy to date Boom Boom for the longest time in X-Force comics. The problem was that for Cannonball, he moved on over to the X-Men. It was kind of like he had graduated. Now, with that being said, when it came to Boom Boom and also Cannonball, they did try to make things work out still, being on two different teams and sometimes being, across the world from one another. But over time, when it came to Boom Boom, she fell in love with Sunspot, Cannonball's best friend. Now, once Cannonball had rejoined X-Force, that was when he learned that she had officially moved on to somebody else. And so ever since then, for Sunspot and Cannonball, who were originally two best friends, they were kind of struggling being friends again. Now, for Sunspot, he wanted to be friends with Cannonball. But for Cannonball, it was kind of hard to get over the idea that his girlfriend had moved on to his best friend. But we now see the two guys being able to work together. We also get reminded that when it comes to Cannonball, the dude has a lot of siblings, a lot of them. But one of them is on Generation X, while the rest are right now with his mother. As a matter of fact, his mom's going through a special kind of medical treatment. So it's him right now getting the call that she's getting better, that she's okay. Now we kind of find out there's something wrong with Boom Boom, but she's not really trying to tell, Sunspot, her boyfriend, what's wrong with her. And so she goes for a walk and asks him not to go with her. Now, of course, Sunspot, he wants to know what's wrong with his lady. And so he begins to follow her, right? But now we switch back over to Taro once again and kind of get the idea that, yes, she's still alive. And now, guys, matter of fact, this whole entire storyline and other books down the road are never truly going to explain how in the world she's alive again right now. It wasn't really fully explained in the storyline, but she's alive. And we see that she's working with somebody else, but we kind of get the idea it's the same person we saw 5 years ago, because again, it's someone close to her, somebody she may love. Now, switching over to Boom Boom, we see her heading over to this diner. And here's the reason why, because she's meeting up with her father. Now, for her and her father, they don't really have a strong relationship with one another. They're trying to get better because he did almost die in an earlier storyline. And he also kind of had the two characters being able to talk to one another, right? And kind of begin the process of healing their relationship. The problem is that when she walks into the diner, the man is completely different, but he's also remarried to his fourth wife. And so for Boom Boom, she's kind of like, oh my God, you got remarried again to another woman. Now I have another stepmother. Now we also learn here that he has joined the Triune Understanding. Now we have talked a lot about that organization over in our coverage over the Avengers. But by the way, sooner or later, we're going to go ahead and continue our coverage over the Avengers. But it's the idea that for her, it's just too much to take in. Look, here you are right now, trying to be a better man. You also got remarried. And now he's also asking her to go on some kind of trip with him and his new wife. And so for her, it's just too much to take in. So she runs out the diner and she sees that Sunspot had followed her. And of course, she's very upset with him. But now we have to switch over to Danny Moonstar for like a brief moment. Here's the reason why. Because for Danny Moonstar, her powers had changed to the point where now she does have reality warping abilities. Not a high level, but a decent level. And so it's Jennifer Kell right now, somebody who does dabble in the magic, trying to help Danny Moonstar figure out how her powers truly work. Now, to kind of go ahead and begin the process of wrapping up this chapter, the first chapter, we do pick up with Domino and Jesse. Now, they head over to this building, hoping to find Jesse's missing brother, except when they walk in, they don't find him. They find Magma. Now, this is kind of huge. And the reason why, because for Magma, she was part of the New Mutants. She was supposedly a good guy. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Magma, her father, and a chunk of different people, they were all tricked by Seline, another mutant, to believe they were part of a lost colony known as Nova Roma, part of the Roman Empire. And of course, that was not true. And so for Magma, she had discovered that in reality, she was never supposed to be some kind of princess, that she was a regular girl who had a family and everything. And so for Magma, ever since finding out her whole entire life some kind of lie, well, she's kind of been on this weird path, as we see that she's currently supposedly a villain who's right now attacking our heroes. Now, we do see a few other characters walk into the room, right? But then at the very end of the battle, Jesse does find his brother. And that would be Christopher. Now, here's the thing about Christopher, though. You see, Christopher and Jesse, they had first appeared back in Age of Apocalypse, that alternate reality that we had covered, that massive storyline a lot of folks love. They appeared a few times in that reality, but at that point in Marvel's timeline, they have not appeared in the main Marvel universe yet. Now, right here is Christopher's first appearance in the main Marvel universe. Now, for Christopher, we learned that when it came to national security, once they had found out that this young boy, Christopher, was a mutant, they took him away and erased any way possible that someone could use to find Christopher. Basically, a clean, fresh start for the guy. We also learned he was the young man that Emma Frost was trying to recruit back then, but of course, he had declined her offer. But right now it's him trying to begin something new to supposedly help out the mutant race. But also, he has formed his new Hellions. Yes, you heard that right. The new Hellions. Like, for example, Magma, Paradigm. You also have a Tarot. You also have Switch as well. This is the new Hellions, and this kind of leads into chapter 2 where we explore what could be his possible big plan. And so as we get into the next chapter of the storyline, we do pick up with Switch. Now, this is us kind of learning a tad bit about the abilities of Switch. And here's the reason why I'm saying that, because for Switch, we currently see the character right now kind of waking up confused where they're currently at and kind of wondering how in the world they end up in that location. Now, getting back over to, the new Hellions and also for, X-Force, you have Christopher explain that his main goal is to kind of help the mutant race out. Now, when it comes to Christopher, he's not really going to reveal his big plan until much later, but right now, it's the idea that he hates to see the mutant race treated as a second-class group out there, that mutants deserve the right to have their own freedom, to not be judged, to not be hunted down. And so his main goal is kind of change the picture for the mutant race. But we also learn here that, there's another member to the, new Hellions, and that would be Pharaoh. Now, when it comes to Pharaoh, okay, so I honestly never did like her character at all. And the reason why, because I kind of felt like she was only a replacement for Wolfbane, because Wolfbane was part of New Mutants, right? But going into the 1990s, they pushed Wolfbane over to X Factor, right? And I kind of felt like the idea of New Mutants going away and being replaced with X-Force, it was like, hey, we need another character who's kind of like Wolfbane, but a tad bit more insane. Ooh, got it. here comes Pharaoh. And so for Pharaoh, over time, she had made a lot of mistakes to get her kicked off the team. Like, for example, being someone who's a well-known murderer for killing her own family. And so they were able to turn her over to the cops, and she was locked away. But apparently Christopher had freed her, and now she's part of X-Force. Now, when it comes to Christopher, he wants X-Force to stay overnight. And the reason why, because he wants X-Force to hopefully join his side. But at the same time, when it comes to Christopher, this dude has a plan, right? And so for X-Force, they're kind of wondering what they should do here. Like, this guy here is trying to bring in the new Hellions, and supposedly they're trying to help out the mutant race, but they're kind of worried how in the world he's going to do that. Now, for Warpath, he does end up meeting with Taro. And let's not forget that these two characters, they do have a bond with one another. The idea that for Taro and also Warpath, they were part of the Hellions. Now, for Taro, when she does look at Warpath, she's proud of him because he's different. He has finally begun to act the way he should be. He found his true version of himself. And so with that being said, when it comes to Taro, she hates the idea of the possibility of something bad happening to Warpath and the rest of X-Force. Now, when it comes to Christopher and also Jesse, they have a conversation, right? And this conversation is really more Jesse want to know, like, what is his older brother truly up to? Now, for Christopher, he does kind of reveal his hand a tad bit here. He kind of shows this project, this very special project that he had found that was left behind by some scientists. Now, when it comes to Jesse, what he sees actually does scare him. Now, here's the problem though, because we're not going to learn what the actual project is until the third chapter of this storyline, but we're kind of left to believe it's something very dangerous and, well, very powerful. Now, while you have X-Force besides Jesse kind of discussing what they should do next, out of nowhere, you have Switch appear. Now, we learn here that Switch ability allows the character to switch bodies, well, with other people. And so the entire time X-Force has been here, after Domino and Jesse had arrived, well, Switch has switched bodies with Domino, and you had the fake Domino trying to convince the rest of X-Force to go ahead and join Christopher's side. But once you have the real Domino appear, it's kind of like, wait, we have been played. Now, of course, you do have Switch and Domino go back to their original bodies. And when it comes to Taro, well, she does draw another card. Now, when she does, she realized, okay, something has happened to our plan. Now, for Christopher, he kind of feels like his X-Force is going to try to ruin their plans, but unfortunately, they're not going to win, right? And so this leads into the big battle. Now, for me personally, the battle's not really important here because, yes, you do have X-Force lose against the new Hellions. But for me, that's not the case because for Chapter 2, it's saying, you know what? Let's go ahead and move X-Force off the board so that we can now focus on Christopher's plan to kind of learn the origin to the secret project that he had found. And so as we get into the closing parts of Chapter 2, what you're seeing right now is the new Hellions being able to win against X-Force just like that. So now we move on to Chapter 3. Now, the third chapter only gives us like a small sample of the origin of this character, and let me explain because it does kind of connect to what we saw in the earlier X-Force comics. The idea that you had the military, test out a nuclear site. Unfortunately, you had different people be affected by that nuclear site because they live nearby it. The problem was that you didn't have those people begin to have children. Now, their children begin to have different abilities. One of those children is better known as the Armageddon Man. Now, for that character, he is known as a lightning rod for natural disasters, storm, earthquakes, tornadoes, and the list goes on. And so in the early page, we learn that it took a lot to bring him down, but he had killed off an entire city with a massive earthquake. And so back in the present day, what we're seeing right now is that you have the new Hellions forcing X-Force begin the process of waking up the Armageddon Man because he was kind of locked away and put in this container that keeps him unconscious. But now they are talking about the idea of waking him back up again. And so we see X-Force being controlled by Paradigm. For some members of the new Hellions like Switch, they had gone out of their way to kidnap a senator. And the reason why, because that senator, he had a hand with the idea of the Armageddon Man. And so he was part of the team that had locked away this powerful being. And so when it comes to, well, new Hellions, they want to use him as a way to force the government to go ahead and pay them $1 billion. But also to kind of say, like, if you don't, we'll release him. Most likely, he has the ability to wipe out the entire West Coast. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to X-Force, they're being controlled by Paradigm. Now, let's not forget, for Dani Moonstar, her power is currently, well, evolving. And so while her powers are evolving to the point where she does or may have some cosmic reality warping abilities, for Paradigm, while controlling the minds of X-Force, she is also being controlled, but her powers now allow her to look into his mind to kind of learn his origin story. Now, when it comes to Paradigm, we learn that when his mutant ability had manifested, he was given the transmode virus, the same kind of virus the Phalanx had back in Phalanx Covenant. Now, with all that being said, it's her kind of diving into his origin story. Learn again, like I said, when his mutant powers had manifested, he was also given the transmode virus. But moving on to the next section, now for the new Hellions, they do have the senator, right? And so they're trying to force his hand to do whatever they want him to do, because it's the idea that he knows how dangerous the Armageddon Man can truly be if he is once again released back into the world. And so every single request you have Christopher or the rest of New Hellions make for the senator, honestly, this man does not have a choice at all. He has to do what they're currently asking him to, well, do. Now, when it comes to Taro, we kind of learn here, really, we saw it earlier, but for Taro, it's her beginning more of the process of trying to switch sides. Like, yes, she's part of the new Hellions, but she kind of realized this plan is very dangerous, that things can pop off very easily. And so we see her right now going to Jesse, the brother to Christopher, to try to convince him to stop his own big brother. But again, for Jesse, he's kind of like, yeah, I should, but like, how can I do it though? Matter of fact, when it comes to Christopher, we do see him trying to leave, it seems like. Like, he hates the idea of trying to stop his brother, but he also kind of feels bad about betraying X-Force, because for X-Force, they took him in, and you had Domino try her best to locate his missing brother, which she did, but now here he is trying to leave them behind to do this whole situation by themselves. Now, he is caught by Christopher, and you do have the two brothers kind of have a, small argument between one another, but it's Christopher apologizing to Jesse. He's kind of like, listen, man, I just want you here. I miss you so much, little bro. Now, this kind of leads into the idea of Taro helping out X-Force from breaking free from Paradigm, because for Paradigm, he's always trying to analyze everything around him. That's kind of part of the whole idea of him getting that transmode virus that came from the Phalanx. Is him not really trying to, absorb things into him, but it's also him wanting to analyze everything, to know everything about every person or every item placed in front of him. And so when it comes to Taro, what she does is going to place different tarot cards inside of him. Now, these tarot cards, they have their own kind of energy. And so for Paradigm, it does kind of seem like he's having a hard time analyzing the kind of magic that comes from the idea of tarot cards. And so with him being messed up, X-Force breaks free. Now, we don't really see a massive battle, because by the end of this chapter, the Armageddon Man is, well, now free. Now, as we get into the final chapter of the storyline, we kind of find out that Jesse had escaped or walked away from the whole entire battle. So he left, I'm guessing, prior to the Armageddon Man being able to be woken up. And so while at this nearby store, well, an earthquake happens just like that. And so, of course, he realized he now has to go back and possibly help out X-Force to bring down the Armageddon Man. Now, when it comes to Christopher, he truly does believe that he has the ability to control the mind of the Armageddon Man. Now, here's the thing, because he does have a device that will allow him to control the being, but you have X-Force begin to fight against the new Hellions. Now, as the battle does go on, you do have a few things that happen. Like, number one, the idea of Siryn getting injured. You see, thanks to Pharaoh, she does scratch the throat of Siryn, and we kind of saw this in our coverage over Generation X, where we saw Banshee had to leave the team for a brief moment because something happened to Siryn. This right here. This is why he had to leave that team to help take care of his daughter, because she did get injured by the hands of Pharaoh. And so you have Sunspot grab her and take her to a nearby hospital. Now for X-Force, they are now down 2 members, but luckily for them, hey, here comes Jesse to help out once again. And also for Jesse, he does go out of his way to destroy a device that his brother was using to control the Armageddon Man. Now, for the new Hellions, they do dip out because they realize this is a losing cause. But when it comes to the Armageddon Man, his powers are going out of control, like expected. All these different kinds of natural disasters are now happening across the West Coast. Now, for our heroes, they do learn how to beat him down. They have to first get him off the ground, because as long as he touches the ground, he is connected to different kinds of lines, scientific lines that, for Marvel's case, has not truly explained just yet. So you know how it goes, guys. Down the road, later comics, going to have like different things pop up left and right involving the science in Marvel comics. But for right now, we're left to believe there's some special lines across the earth that where the Armageddon Man is able to draw his power from. And so you do have our heroes go out of the way to just get him in the air and then hit him with enough energy to just beat him down to make him go knockout time. And so that's wild, to go knockout time, to just knock him out. But anyways, you have our heroes win, right? Now, this leads into 2 things happening. Because you do have the Senator kind of promise to take care of the Armageddon Man and kind of make sure that he's once again put away, but also like the possibility of being cured. We already know that's not the case. But when it comes to our heroes, they do allow Jesse to rejoin, because for Jesse, it wasn't like flat out he had betrayed X-Force. It was kind of like, hey, listen, he just stood there for most of the time because he didn't know what was the right route to take. You found your long lost brother, that's great, but then your old team right now are his prisoners. What are you going to do? And so he just stood there for most of the storyline. And so for X-Force, they kind of realized he had a hard decision to make, and they allow him a second chance. Because we have to remember about Siryn, the possibility that she's pretty injured, right? And so we do see that for Siryn. The doctor says, hey, listen, like, she's recovering, she'll live, but she lost the ability to speak, which could also mean she may lose the ability to use her powers as well. And so the book does kind of end on that note. So let's go ahead and get back into our coverage over X-Force. And I kind of feel like it's been a while for me since I recorded a video, because usually, guys, when I record videos, I record in like weeks in advance sometimes. So sometimes I'll record like 15 videos in a week and then like stop recording for a couple of days, or even more than that sometimes. And so when it comes to me recording this time around, it has been a few days because 1, I've been sick, and 2, with me being a teacher, we barely have any time after school to do almost anything at all. But anyways, getting back into our coverage over X-Force. See, as we get into X-Force issue number 91, we're kind of picking up where a previous storyline had left off at. The idea of Siryn, and let me explain. You see, when it came to our last video, at the tail end of that storyline where you had X-Force fighting against the new Hellions, one of the members of the new Hellions was a character known as Pharaoh. Now, we had talked a lot about Pharaoh because Pharaoh was part of X-Force. She was one of the founding members, but she was kicked off the team a long time ago when the team found out that she had killed off different members of her family. And so when it came to Pharaoh, she was sent away to prison. But of course, she was free again, and she joined the new Hellions who fought against X-Force. Well, when it came to a pharaoh, she did some serious damage to the lungs of Siryn, to the point where Siryn will no longer be able to possibly speak or no longer be able to use her powers. I kind of like this issue a lot because it's really more the book trying to tell us like what she is going through at the moment. The idea of her struggling to move on with her life without the ability of her voice, but also the ability of her powers as well. And so in the opening pages of the storyline, it does seem like at first that Siryn is going to jump off a bridge and basically kill herself. Now, of course, we already know that's not really the case because honestly, the storyline is all about her going through the struggles of losing her voice and her powers. So again, it does seem like at first she did jump off this bridge to kill herself, but no, it was her imagining that. And so we now kind of switch over to the rest of X-Force. Now, when it comes to X-Force, they're still trying to kind of deal with the effects of the previous storyline, better known as Armageddon Now. Now, not really getting into that entire storyline there, it was the idea that you had the government lock up this powerful creature that the new Hellions were trying to use as a way to force the government to pay them a huge amount of money. Now, of course, X-Force stepped in and being able to shut everything down. But the problem is right now when it comes to X-Force, they're seeing the senator that they had saved in the last storyline from the new Hellions trying to push this new moment or movement with the idea of going after the mutant race, especially in the West Coast where our heroes are currently located at. Now, while you do have our heroes watching the news, you do have two characters come over to their home. One of them is Jesse, who technically lives there, but the other one would be Banshee. Now, if you have been watching our coverage over Generation X, you have saw that there was a point in time where Banshee had left the school to go take care of Siryn. It's this moment right here. And so right now is him coming here to see his daughter, but she's not there. So you have the rest of the team kind of wondering where in the world could Siryn be at? And so this kind of leads into the idea of us seeing Siryn right now just wandering around the town, right? Now for Siryn, she's kind of being also used to kind of help people around this time who were jumping into X-Force in the late 1990s, going into the early 2000s. Because for X-Force, there are, what, again, 91 issues, and sometimes you have folks just jump in like in random points in time and kind of confused on the history of X-Force. So again, we're seeing the early images of X-Force, the idea of how the team came together, made by Cable, then led by Cannonball. And then once Cannonball had left the team originally to join the X-Men, she took over as leader. Now, when it came to Siryn, while being a member of X-Force, she was also kind of slowly falling for Warpath. Now, technically, it was him falling for her first, but she kind of kept pushing him away because she was afraid of what he would see when he got the chance to know the real her real past. But now it's kind of like she does care for him, but they never did truly establish that they want to be in a relationship with one another. Now, she does go to this bar where they have like open mic night, whatever, and you have someone sing a song. And hearing this person sing so beautifully, it bothers her again because she lost her voice. She lost her powers. But now we got to switch over to Boom Boom and also, well, Sunspot. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, she was going to name Meltdown, but I like Boom Boom better. But anyways, for Boom Boom and Sunspot, they had begun dating one another, I want to say back in like in the 70 issue range for X-Force comics, but it all happened because Cannonball was her boyfriend at first, but he had left the team to go join the X-Men. That left the door open for somebody else to step in, and that was, well, Sunspot. And so when it came to Sunspot being the best friend to Cannonball, he began to date Cannonball's ex-girlfriend Meltdown, and things just seemed to get good for them. And matter of fact, Cannonball, at first, he was very angry, but he kind of moved on with the idea of seeing his ex-girlfriend dating his best friend. But now it kind of seems like their relationship is getting a tad bit rocky, to the point where you basically have Boom Boom kind of hinting at the idea of breaking up with Sunspot. But then right after she walks away, that is when he's confronted by the INS. Now, INS basically is Immigration Naturalization Service. And so right now, they're here to take Sunspot away because they believe he's in the country illegally. Now, when it comes to Banshee and the rest of X-Force, they're also still trying to search for Siryn as well. But here's the thing about Banshee though. You see, for Banshee, his relationship with his daughter is still in kind of rebuilding phase, and let me explain why. Because for Banshee, when it came to Siryn's mother, he had no idea that she was pregnant when he had left her behind because he was part of the CIA. And so once he came back, he heard that the woman he loved had died, not knowing that she was pregnant, gave birth, and his cousin Black Tom had took his daughter. He didn't find out until years later once she was basically a grown woman. And so ever since then, he has been trying his best to build that relationship with his daughter. Now, technically at this point, I can say for myself, it is a strong relationship, but it's him also kind of knowing what she is going through as well. Because there was a point in time where he had lost his powers as well, lost his voice. And so he does know what his daughter is going through. Now, something else we have to remember is the idea of Siryn being an alcoholic. She still technically is one, but she has been sober for a good while now. But it's her right now kind of walking that edge, right? The idea of getting back into drinking, because for her, she always kind of felt like there was this empty spot, this empty hole in her heart that drinking kind of filled that spot up. And that spot being filled by alcohol kind of made her scared for Warpath to see the true her in her mind. And so for her, she has been sober, but she does remember that when she was younger, every single time Black Tom would go out of his way to, pull off some crazy heist, when it came time to celebrate, it would be with alcohol. Now, something else also being set up at the moment is the idea of, Domino. You see, in an earlier storyline, when it came to Domino, she had stopped some bank robbers, right? Now, this was when she was kind of on her own, but anyways, she was caught on camera. So for the police officers, they're kind of like, who is she? And what in the world was she doing bringing down these bank robbers? Now, of course, this detective has been trying his best to locate her. The problem was for him, Domino has been using different names throughout her life. And one of those names he had found was for an old woman in Florida. So he already knew that was not her real name. But once he found out that she was Domino, he had been trying his best to locate her and get some answers from her. Unfortunately, she disappears on him. And so unfortunately, he's not able to get those answers that he was looking for. And so this book does end on the note where we really see, Siryn come home, right? When she does come home, she hands a letter over to, James Prowstar, better known as Warpath. And it's her telling him she has to leave. She has to figure out life on her own. And so it's her now officially leaving X-Force. So again, it's X-Force kind of going through a change. And matter of fact, there'll become a big change down the road for X-Force in the last few issues, leading into a different kind of X-Force comic. But now it's time for us to go ahead and switch over to X-Force issue number 92. Now, with this issue alone, it's another one-shot, and really, it does focus more on Domino. Now, as we all know, for Domino, in the last chapter, she was confronted by that cop with answers about how she was able to bring down 3 different robbers back in Washington, D.C. But out of nowhere, she had just disappeared, right? Well, she was teleported away into what could be a different dimension or out of reality completely. And let me explain, because we see her just kind of walking around this room, this empty room. And then, of course, there's staircases out of nowhere, different hallways, tunnels, and she's kind of wondering where in the world she is at. But while she is walking around, that is when she hears a voice. And the voice kind of guiding her to one location. And once she does enter a certain door, she ends up in this home. where then she's confronted by some kind of butler. Now, this butler is really more there to make sure that she feels welcome and kind of get her ready for the night, because apparently she has dinner with his boss or master, whatever. And so for Domino, of course, she does kind of push him up against the wall to kind of get some answers like, what in the world is truthfully going on here? But the butler does not really give her any kind of answers at all. Really, he just shows her all the different outfits that she could wear for the night. Now, all these different outfits are old outfits from her past while being Domino, but she does put one on. But while she does continue to walk around the area, that is when she finds this guy. Now, this guy at first I thought was Forge, but it's not Forge. It's some kind of scientist who's currently working on a device called the Chaos Engine, a transdimensional reality interface. Now, this device becomes somewhat important for later parts in this chapter alone. But when it comes to Domino, when she does continue to walk around this supposed area and everything, she does find this vent, and she believes that this could lead her the way out of this where she's at the moment, except that is when she is then hit with reality bending energy. And so it's so unpleasant, but luckily for her, she's then pulled back into the building by Halloween Jack. Now, Halloween Jack is a very interesting character because technically he comes from the Marvel 2099 line, and let me explain. You see, his name is Jordan Boone. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But for his character, he's looking for a very powerful company in the far future. And one of their many projects was to take different subjects and try to recreate the Norse gods. So like Thor, Loki, and the list goes on. Now, once you were a subject that was going through this experiment, you also had a chip planted in your brain to make you believe that you were really that god. Now, in reality, you weren't, but it was the idea to make you believe you were one. And so when it came to Jordan, he went through that experiment to turn himself into the Loki in the far future. But luckily for him, he did not get a brain chip where he didn't believe he was actually Loki. Now, with all that being said, when it came to Halloween Jack here, he did seem to die in the 2099 line years prior to the storyline, but out of nowhere, he's alive again, and right now in some kind of building that's in between realities. Now, for a brief moment, we do check in on Sunspot. And the reason why, because for Sunspot, it's the idea that he might get deported. Now, the reason why, because for Sunspot, he was part of the whole Rainfire situation, you know, the evil clone of him, basically. But when it comes to Sunspot, right, he has two choices. He can stay in the country and face charges, or two, leave. Even though his father's company does have many offices in America, it's the idea that, hey, you came to our country and you did some, terrible things with Rainfire, who's a well-known terrorist in our country. So you have two choices right now. And so for Sunspot, the question is, which choice is he going to take? Now, this kind of leads into the second half of the storyline of this chapter, where we can kind of breeze through this chapter very easily. And the reason why, because, okay, when it comes to Halloween Jack, the reason why he's after Domino, because he saw her while looking at different people, different times, different realities, and he basically fell in love with her. And so his main goal is to now protect her, because he realized that in some future, X-Force and her are going to fail and they're going to die. And so he believed the best way to protect her was to just go ahead and pull her out of her own timeline into this building that's out of reality. But on top of that as well, he went back in time to study her. Like, he found her diary and found different people who were close to her to kind of get a better idea of who she is. And he was kind of hoping to win her over. Now, of course, with Domino, she finds this very creepy. She's like, dude, no. And she wants to go home. Now, she is able to escape, and she does make her way over to the Chaos Engine. Now, once she does get there, she is confronted by Cable. Now, this is not really Cable. It's Halloween Jack, because again, for Halloween Jack in the far future, when he had gained the abilities of Loki, he gained the ability to shapeshift. So, of course, this right here is not really, Gable, it's Halloween Jack, but also you have Domino force Jack to go ahead and send her back home. Like literally, that's the end of this one shot almost, because once she does get back home, she then calls up Victor. Now for Victor, he's a very important character for her life, but I want to go ahead and move to the end of this chapter. Now, for the rest of X-Force, they kind of realize something. Like, hey, Domino and also Sunspot are missing. Like, we should go out of our way to, I don't know, find them. But then out of nowhere, they hear a voice call them out. And this leads into the 93rd issue of X-Force, the last chapter of this video. And so as we get into the final chapter of today's storyline, we're now picking up with this great warrior. Now, I'm not going to explain who this great warrior is just yet, because honestly, he does become somewhat important at the very end of this storyline and kind of helps out X-Force. But anyways, we do switch over to, well, X-Force. Because we do switch over to X-Force right now on this island, right? And we see them fighting against all these different kind of creatures or plant life. And so we're kind of left to wonder, how in the world do we get here? Because at the end of the last chapter, our heroes were confronted by someone we didn't see. And then out of nowhere, our heroes are on some kind of island trying to survive. And so as the battle goes on, you then have Cannonball out of nowhere get supercharged, where he's then able to take out all the different creatures on the island. But that is when we're introduced to two new externals. And I meant to say Eternals, not externals. But when it comes to these two Eternals, Electron and Stardy, these two characters are, really one-time appearance in Marvel Comics. Out of the storyline, they never appear ever again. But these two came out of their way, not to just find X-Force, but to find, well, Danny Moonstar. Because for Danny Moonstar, around this time in Marvel Comics, her powers were evolving. And so it's the idea of us right now trying to see what her powers are going to evolve into. And matter of fact, for these two Eternals, they believe the powers that she has now can basically help them with a certain kind of problem. And so with a small quick flashback, we get seeing like how they recruited our heroes and told our heroes to head over to this island with them. Now we're kind of all caught up and go ahead and get back over to the present day. Now, we're also getting a quick reminder of the idea of Domino and also Sunspot, because those two characters, they had their own adventures away from X-Force. So it's the two of them right now coming back home and realizing the rest of the team is not there. But it's also Sunspot informing Domino that he is leaving the team temporarily, with the idea that he has been labeled as a terrorist and he has to leave the country. And so just like that, for Sunspot, he's now officially off the team at the moment. But getting back over to the rest of our heroes, the reason why you have the two Eternals go out of their way to get Danny Moonstar is because they believe this island is sending out these quantum disruptions across the area. And so with that happening, there is some device down there that Danny Moonstar powers should be able to cancel out the machine and stop what it's doing right now currently. Now, when our heroes do arrive and go inside the temple and they find a machine, well, you didn't have the rest of the members of X-Force minus Danny Moonstar all get transformed into some kind of element being, but also kind of being frozen in space or in time. And so just like that, we learn here that when it came to the two Eternals, they tricked our heroes to go over to this island, but in reality, their main goal was to steal the powers of Danny Moonstar. And so just like that, they take her powers away, and it does seem like at first she is completely powerless. And this is where you had a story kind of go a tad bit in that conclusion area. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to Danny Moonstar, she does run into a character known as Rylor. Now, when it comes to Rylor, he was this great king on his home world, but he ended up stranded on Earth. Now, once he did arrive on Earth stranded, he found two different tribes who were kind of at war against one another. And so instead of trying to conquer them, instead, he became the peacemaker. They looked at him as some kind of god, and so they began to praise him. Now, shortly, he began to love the idea of being praised, but also he began to share his technology with them as well. But the problem was that over time, you had the humans try to use his own technology against him. It made him lose control, and he killed off the entire 2 tribes who were worshiping him. And so ever since then, he kind of said, you know what? I'm going to stay on this island, but hidden away forever. And so it has been centuries since that had happened. But anyways, when it comes to Danny Moonstar, she finds him, right? And he's kind of like, hey, listen, you have these quantum powers. I'm going to teach you how to use it correctly and then go fight them to go free your friends. And so it's really him teaching her how to control her quantum powers. Now, after doing that, it's her also saying, like, even though what you did had killed off many people, why not go back to the other home world, other worlds out there that you had conquered and try to make them better as a way to repay for what you've done those 2 tribes? And so after saying that, now once you do have Danny Moonstar being able to use her powers to free her friends, you then have our heroes go confront the 2 Eternals. Now with them doing that, you have a small battle happen, but you have our heroes being able to win the battle. Now we do learn for our 2 Eternals, they were working for somebody else. And for the sake of the length of this video, I'm not going to explain who it is, but in the next video, I'll bring him up and go over full detail of that character. But either way, you do have our heroes win the battle. The problem is that they're now stranded on the island that they got stuck on with the Eternals. And the question is now, how are they going to get back home? And this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, I kind of realized something, and this could be somewhat wild here to say, but I feel like X-Force in the late 1990s began to become a tad bit like Excalibur. And let me explain. You see, when it came to Excalibur in the late 1980s, going into the 1990s, they weren't really part of the whole X family. And hear me out, because in the late 80s and 1990s, you had a good chunk of X crossovers. You know, you had Inferno, you had Mutant Massacre, you also had, oh my God, I forgot a few of them, but like you had a few different, X-Men crossovers happen, but Excalibur was not really involved in any of those crossovers. It was really more X-Factor or Uncanny X-Men or Wolverine, and heck, even X-Force when they first appeared in the early 1990s. For Excalibur, they were over there. Now, the mid-1990s, as we all saw, for Excalibur, they became part of the whole X family. But then, of course, Excalibur got canceled. X-Factor got canceled. And so now you're left with Uncanny X-Men, X-Men, Wolverine, Cable, and you also have X-Force. Now, we have been covering a lot of different X-Men events lately. We cover The Shattering, we covered Apocalypse the 12, and we also cover Ages of Apocalypse. But then I realized something. As we were covering all those different crossovers for X-Force, they kind of fell to the side a tad bit. It was kind of like, yeah, you could read X-Force, but save those books for later. And we cover, again, 3 major X-Men crossovers. You had Wolverine also still getting covered. You had Cable still getting covered. You even had Generation X getting covered. And I kind of see why X-Force kind of fell to the side a tad bit, because they were kind of on their own side quest. Like, they're out in the world doing their own thing, and occasionally they might get involved in other X-Men stuff. And this storyline right here kind of proves that, because it's now X-Force getting involved with Genosha. Now, we have talked a lot about Genosha when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, right? It's the idea that when it came to Magneto War, you had the UN say hey, let's go ahead and make a deal with Magneto. And so they gave him Genosha, an island near Africa, kind of say look, you're now the ruler of Genosha. You now have your supposed safe haven for mutants. So there you go. Leave us alone. Now, when it comes to Genosha, we have talked a lot about Genosha, because at first, when it first appeared in Marvel Comics, it was the idea of this nation trying to paint a picture that it was a perfect nation. It had no issues at all. But in reality, though, when it came to Genosha, It was having mutants be slaves, using mutants to kind of do their bidding there, do all the work for them to build that beautiful nation they were trying to show the rest of the world. Now, over time in X-Men comics, Genosha had went through a lot. The legacy virus, you had the war between mutants and humans. And so for Magneto, even though technically right now he's officially, in charge of Genosha, you still have some groups out there who hate the idea of Magneto or the mutants being in charge and wanted their nation to belong to humans once again. So for X-Force, when they arrive on Genosha, well, they're right now in the middle of battle right now. They're fighting two different sides at the moment. Now, the reason why you have X-Force in Genosha is really more the idea because of, well, Cannonball. You see, in our last video, we had not discussed this. Domino had received a package that was for Cannonball. Cannonball and the rest of X-Force, minus Sunspot for a completely different reason, were on a different island, kind of on crazy adventure. And so, of course, when they got back home, Domino said, hey, bro, you got a package, and Cannonball realized where he had to go, which was Genosha. Now, with them being there, we learned who has sent the package. It was Pete Wisdom. Now, we have not seen Pete for a good while because he was a major character when it came to Excalibur. Matter of fact, there was a point in time where he dated Kitty Pryde, and it did seem like maybe, just maybe, Kitty Pryde had found her one true love. It didn't work out, and also for Excalibur, the book was canceled, the team disbanded. And so for Pete, he's kind of been around for a good while. Now, we do learn here that for Pete, now when it comes to Pete Wisdom, we do see him take the characters X-Force over to this shop nearby to hide out for the time being. Now, this shop is really important, and the reason why, because as soon as they walk in, you have Boom Boom, or better known as Meltdown, around this time in Marvel Comics. She opens up a box. Now, each of the boxes in this store apparently holds a memory from somebody else. And once you do open up that box, you are then able to relive that person's memory. And so for Boom Boom, she relives someone else's life in the past when they're a young boy going through a major event in their life. And so you have Pete close the box to bring her back into reality. That part right there is really important. And the reason why, because when it came to Pete Wisdom, when he had sent that package over to Cannonball, it also held a box as well. And when Cannonball had opened up that box, it was a memory that may have belonged to him, but he does not remember it. And it's kind of like, why doesn't he? Because in that flashback, we see that he watched two beings fight against one another and create some kind of lightning storm, and him and a few other people, most likely his siblings, were running away from the big battle between those two beings. But for Cannonball, he does not remember that at all. Now, for Pete Wisdom, why is he on Genosha for? Well, now we have talked a lot about Black Air when it came to our coverage over the X-Men. Now, when it came to Black Air, they replaced the WHO organization. WHO was the weird happening organization that appeared in the early days of Excalibur, and they would go around like investigate weird things happening across the world. Now, once you had WHO go away, Black Air came in, this secret intelligence group for the UK. Now, over time, Black Air's main goal was to collect like different alien artifacts, other kind of weird things happening on the Earth. Now, you then had a whole storyline where you had Black Air and a different branch of the Hellfire Club try their best to take over the UK. Things did not work out for them because of Excalibur. Now, for Pete Wisdom, he was part of Black Air. And so with Excalibur now being gone, it's his job and his mindset to go out in the world and fix all the wrongdoings that Black Air did over time. And so for him, he said there was this satellite that Black Air was trying to use for space travel. It disappeared, but then came back out of nowhere and crashed on Genosha 3 days prior, before Magneto had took over Genosha. And the problem is right now, there's something really important about that satellite that Magneto currently has, but has no idea of the true power he's currently holding on to. And so their main goal, his main goal, is to find that item and get away from Magneto. Now, we also learn here that Delphi is a shop owner. Now, for me, Delphi is a cool character that Marvel just quickly forgotten about. Because for Delphi, what she can do is go into your mind, extract a memory, and place it somewhere else. Like, for example, the memory boxes that Boom Boom and also Cannonball had went through, which means that when it came to Cannonball, there's a huge chance she did the same thing for him. Now, why does she do that? It's kind of a way for to help you to get over something that keeps you up at night. Like maybe you kill somebody, maybe you cheat on your taxes, maybe you like hurt someone you care so much for. Well, she'll go into your mind, extract it from your mind, and say like, hey, you now have forgotten about that moment. Now we do switch over to Sunspot. Now for Sunspot, he was deported from the country. Here's the reason why. Because the whole Rainfire situation. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to re-explain the whole idea of Rainfire because it was, for me personally, a mess. Like, still a cool character, but I feel like Marvel did a tad bit too much with the idea of Rainfire. But it was the idea that Rainfire was someone else who looked and acted just like Sunspot. And so because Rainfire was a terrorist, when it came to the US government, they saw Rainfire said, ooh, that looks like Sunspot. You know what? He's a terrorist now. And so for Sunspot, he was labeled as a terrorist and forced out of the country. Now, of course, right now, he's trying his best to get back into America. But while out of the country and chilling at his hotel, he sees some young woman right now being pushed into an elevator by two random guys. Now, of course, for Sunspot, he feels like he has to be a hero. Now, when he goes over there, those two guys turn into some kind of creatures. Now, for Sunspot, he was able to deal with them, but we come to find out the young lady that he was trying to save is no other than Seline. But getting back over to the rest of X-Force, what we're seeing right now is really more Delphi going out of her way to use her power on the different members of X-Force minus Domino, because it's her saying like, let me take something from you, but give you something else to use out there in the field. So for example, for Boom Boom, it's the first time when her powers have manifested. She may forget how it all went down, but in return, she has now get a new skill from someone else's memories. Each member of X-Force is going through this except for Domino. Now, it is also Delphi telling Domino that right now, her past could get her killed. It's her saying like, Domino, you need to let go of your past so that you will not die in the future. But either way, our heroes have now gained different skills that should help them on this mission to get into the base of Magneto and find this special item that Pete Wisdom is trying to retrieve. But this kind of leads into the ending of this chapter, because once you do have our heroes work their way over to the warehouse where the satellite's being kept at, well, you then have, well, Quicksilver find out that X-Force is on Genosha. Now, for Quicksilver, okay, so around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Quicksilver, as soon as Magneto had gained Genosha, he said, I have to be on Magneto's side. Now, it's not him saying like, my father's right, we need a place for mutants. No, it's him right now keeping an eye out on his father, because he already knows sooner or later Magneto is going to mess up in some kind of way, right? And so he's on Genosha to kind of watch over his father. But once he finds out that X-Force is on Genosha, he's kind of like, they gotta be stopped. They're here for something. So he runs over to them. Now, Cannonball was able to take down Quicksilver. And the only reason why, because you had Cannonball use one of the memory boxes on Quicksilver, it slowed him down long enough to allow Cannonball to grab Quicksilver and slam into a wall to knock him out. Now, once you do have our heroes work their way through the warehouse that belongs to Magneto, we find this special item that was on the satellite that Pete Wisdom is trying to retrieve. The thing is, it's a brain. But here's the problem though, because once he does get that brain, all different kind of cyborgs that have been kept inside this warehouse begin to move. Like they all coming to life and heading towards X-Force. But also somebody else is heading back over to Genosha, and that would be Magneto. And so this kind of leads us into the second chapter of this storyline. Now, really for us, this second chapter is not really that long. So we kind of like breeze through it very quickly, unfortunately, for the length of this video. But it's the idea that when it came to Pete Wisdom, the reason why he went out of his way to get this brain, because it's a brain of his friend. Let me explain. You see, he had a friend who was also part of Black Air, better known as Archimedes Fogg. And I know I just butchered that name, so you know what? We're going to call him Archie for now. Now, when it comes to Archie, what he was able to do was he could copy people neural patterns of their brain and place those patterns into computers, right? So basically copying your brain and putting that copy into your computer. The problem was that he decided to use himself as a test subject, and well, his whole entire brain was copied into a computer system. And so when it came to Black Air, they basically used this copy brain of his as now part of the computer system to run their satellite, and also make sure the satellite will constantly repair itself anytime some damage was done. And so when it came to satellite, when it did disappear for 2 years and came back to Earth and crash on Genosha, well, the brain was taken away. But once you had our heroes grab the brain, it reactivated itself, and then all the different computers, cyborgs, whatever in the room were also activated as well, and now trying to get towards the brain. So you have our heroes just trying their best to survive. Here's the problem though, because as the battle goes on, all the different machines get wiped out by one person. And of course, that would be Magneto. But I want to switch over to Domino and also Jesse. Here's the reason why, because these two characters, they're on a different part of the mission right now that could basically help X-Force out at the very end of the storyline. And so while you have Domino and Jesse going out of their way to complete their part of the mission, you also have Jesse kind of sneak away to take some meds. Now, when it comes to X-Force, they had no idea Homeboy was taking medicine. And so for Domino, she wants to know what in the world he is taking. And apparently they are electro-neuroinhibitors. You see, the bioelectric static that he generates messes with his brain chemistry. If he does not take them, he could go literally insane. And so it's right now Domino learning more about Jesse. But I want to go ahead and get back over to X-Force, fighting against Magneto. Now, for me, this is a great callback. And the reason why, because, okay, when it comes to Magneto, there was a point in time where he was the headmaster to Charles Xavier School. Yes, you heard that right. You see, when it came to Magneto, when Charles left to go be in space with his space girlfriend and all, you had Magneto take over the school. Now, when he did that, he became the teacher for the New Mutants. And most of the members of X-Force were part of the New Mutants. So they have that bond. But it's also the idea that right now for the X-Force team, they're no longer the children that Magneto had taught many years ago, that they have grown up, that now they know how to fight for themselves. And so we're seeing our heroes trying their best to keep the brain away from Magneto because he wants it back. In his mindset, because it did land on Genosha, it belongs to him. And so either way, you do have our heroes being able to hold off against Magneto to allow Warpath the chance to kind of get away. Now for Quicksilver, he does recover and he wants to figure out who should he help, his father or X-Force. And so for Warpath, so you know what, Quicksilver, let's have a conversation on why you should possibly help me out. Now, let's not forget what I said earlier when it comes to Domino and also Jesse, because again, they were doing something else to help out the X-Force team. So we come to find out their main goal was to shut down the power on the entire island. Here's the reason why it's a problem, because again, for Magneto, even though the UN had given Genosha over to him, you still have some forces out there on Genosha who hate the idea of mutants ruling the island. And so right now, they're out there still trying to attack different areas to hopefully bring down Magneto and the rest of the mutants. And so the idea of power being out, meaning that those other forces can now access different warehouses that are holding weapons that Magneto and his people were currently holding on to. So again, causing chaos across the entire island. And so it allows X-Force to run away while you have Magneto deal with that situation on his island. And so this leads into the end of the storyline where it's basically more of us seeing our heroes getting away from Genosha, going to a boat, but also placing the brain patterns of Archie into a life model decoy. So basically a shield robot, right? Now, once that's done right, there's the idea of Archie now having a new body to use in the real world, right? Now, this also leads to the ending of the storyline where you have them hand over to Cannonball another memory box. And so once you have Cannonball open up that box, he discovers there's a possibility that his father and his uncle were murderers. And this is where we're going to end today's comic. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over X-Force, right? We're going to pick up with issues number 96, 97, and 98. Now, here's the thing, because I don't think I was really clear when it came to some of my earlier videos of what's coming next for the channel when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, because we had just wrapped up Apocalypse to 12 and Ages of Apocalypse, right? And those are two smaller events, right? But when it comes to X-Men Revolution, it's a tad bit different. And let me explain, because it's not really a crossover. It's really more of an imprint. You see, for the next few videos for X-Force, Wolverine, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men like Cable 2, and also X-Man, we're going to see like some regular stories, right? And then X-Men Revolution happens. And when that happens, there's going to be a 6-month time jump. Like literally a 6-month time jump. And then you're going to have new writers on every single book, but also the return of Chris Claremont as well. And so for right now, we're getting kind of like some regular stories, and then we get that 6-month time jump. And then we see some new interesting stories being done by Chris Claremont and new writers on every single book. Now, getting into the opening pages for issue number 96. You see, as we get into the opening pages for X-Force issue number 96, we do pick up with Cannonball breaking out his Uncle Lucas from prison. And here's the reason why. Because for Cannonball, he had just recently discovered the possibility that his father and his Uncle Lucas may have killed somebody in the past. But apparently Sam was there, but Sam had forgotten about the entire moment. Now, we had learned in our last video, there's a character known as Delphi. When it comes to Delphi, she has the ability to take out certain memories from your brain and then place inside boxes for other people to actually view. And so when it came to Cannonball, his memory of that night when his father and his uncle possibly had killed somebody was taken from him. Now, part of it was given back to him, but the problem is that right now is him kind of wondering like, okay, did my father and my uncle kill somebody? And so we see Cannonball right now using his powers to grab his uncle out of prison to have this one-on-one conversation. Now, when it comes to his Uncle Lucas, he's all like, listen, I will tell you the whole entire story, but first, we gotta go to a strip club first, get some food, get some beer, see some ladies, and then I will tell you everything you need to know. You see, we learn here that when it came to Lucas, the uncle to Cannonball, right, he met someone known as Randy Lee. And apparently Randy gave Lucas a job where they were going to steal some kind of truck. Now, this truck was supposedly holding on to unmarked cigarettes. So like, this job should have been very easy. Get the truck, deliver the truck, get the money, and you go away. That's it. That's final, right? The problem was that there was a guard there that night that had a gun and shot at Randy Lee. Now, before Randy died, he told Lucas to where to take the vehicle at. But the problem was that once you have Randy died, his body turned back into, well, his normal form. That's no longer human. And so for Lucas, he's kind of like, oh my God, I'm riding with some kind of alien. What in the world is going on here? So for Lucas, he had pulled over. Now, when he did pull over and look in the actual truck, he realized that he was no longer moving cigarettes. He was now moving some kind of being. Now, we kind of do switch over to Boom Boom, right? And when it comes to, Meltdown. I forgot around this time in Marvel Comics, she had the code name Meltdown, no longer Boom Boom. Anyways, we see Meltdown right now hanging out with Jesse. Now, technically, it's just two different members of X-Force hanging out and kind of building that bond with one another. But they have no idea that she's being watched by somebody. Somebody truly wants her and wants to put her on some kind of different path in life. Now, getting back to the main storyline for this chapter, the idea of like, did Cannonball's father and uncle kill somebody? You have Lucas say, listen, once I realized there was something going on, I realized I needed some kind of backup. And he went over to Cannonball's father, of course, his own brother. Now, of course, when he came to his brother, he agreed to help out Lucas. And so you have the two guys get back in the truck and try to head over to the location where the truck was supposed to be delivered to. The problem was that neither guys realized that Sam woke up, overheard the entire conversation, snuck out of the house, and snuck into the back of the truck. And so when you have the two guys deliver the truck over to this Mr. Finn buddy, well, you had, I said buddy, I don't know why I said buddy for pal. Anyways, you had Sam Guthrie get back out of the truck as a young boy and begin to snoop around the place. Now, with him doing that, he realized that this secret organization has gone out of their way to kidnap different children who were basically runaways and began to do different kinds of experiments on them. Now, of course, for Sam, he got caught. When he got caught, you didn't have that guard who caught him bring him back over to his father and his uncle. And the guys realized that their son, their nephew, had decided to tag along, and now the whole entire situation a tad bit worse. Because for Mr. Finn, he has no idea what Sam saw yet. And with that being said, he's kind of like, listen, I cannot risk the opportunity of you guys going out in the world and possibly not keeping your mouth shut. So how about this? Because your son saw everything, I'm going to kill him and kill you too as well. Now we do switch over to Dani Moonstar. We have to remember that for her character, her powers had technically changed once again because she kind of swapped powers with Arcadia. So she now has quantum powers, right? And so you have Jennifer Kell trying to help her understand her powers a tad bit better. Here's the problem though, because she's now beginning to see things like, for example, the Demon Bear. Now, that is a callback to a classic New Mutant storyline from the 1980s that we still haven't really covered on the channel yet. But it's the idea of her right now seeing that creature once again, then it disappears just like that. Now we do switch over to, well, Sunspot. Now in our last video, Sunspot ran into a character known as Seline. Now for Seline, man, okay, she's like a long time, like X-Men, New Mutant villain. For me personally, more New Mutants and I guess X-Force rather than the X-Men. But when it comes to Seline, it's the possibility that she is the first mutant. Maybe, maybe not. It could be Apocalypse. Who knows? Around this time in Marvel Comics. But she's been around for a very long time. Very powerful character. Now, by this point in Marvel Comics, she is now in complete control of the Hellfire Club. And keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to Seline, she found Sunspot for a special reason. Because she then shows off a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that she has captured. Better known as Holiday. Now, we saw Holiday in a previous storyline because he promised Sunspot and the rest of X-Force that he will deal with Rainfire. Now, later on in this video, I'll go into more detail of who in the world is Rainfire is. But for right now, just know that Holiday did not properly deal with Rainfire. Matter of fact, he handed Rainfire over to the Domintees Foundation. And we have talked a lot about that foundation in an earlier video, but they're now becoming a little tad bit more important for this video. Now, getting back over to the Cannonball storyline, because this storyline is really important for the later chapters of this whole video. Because when it comes to the mystery guys that Lucas and also Cannonball's father had, well, now been captured by, we learn they are Deviants. Now, Deviants are one of three races that were basically birthed when it came to the Celestials when they had arrived on Earth. The humans, the Eternals, and also the Deviants. Now, here's the thing. When the Celestials had arrived, they also had these golems as well, or gatherers. What these golems did was, when they arrived on Earth, they had collected materials that basically helped Celestials create the different kind of beings that would be on Earth. The Deviants, the Eternals, the humans. Now, here's the thing. The Celestials left, but some of the gatherers were left behind. The one right here is a gatherer. And so what they're trying to do is access information that is possibly locked away inside the gatherer to help begin the process of birthing a brand new kind of species, to bring in the next evolution to man. Now, of course, you did have a few things happen where our heroes, this is Lucas, Cannonball's father and Cannonball, were able to escape. Now, while they're trying to escape, but also help the children get out of there as well, they run into another character, and that would be Sledge. Now, we had also talked a lot about Sledge, but technically, when it came to the earlier books he appeared in, we didn't really get the chance to learn much about his character. All we know is that he's also a deviant as well. Now, for Sledge, he does help out when it comes to fighting against the golem that had activated. You have Sledge make sure the golem was completely defeated. Now, once they had did that, we kind of find out the golem did kill off every single deviant before being destroyed that was trying to use it. And so you had Cannonball's father and Cannonball's uncle go out of their way to bury all the dead bodies of the different dead deviants. Now, this leads into the idea of why Cannonball had completely forgotten about this event. Because Cannonball's father, Cannonball's uncle, they both had decided that Sam and the rest of the children that had been kidnapped should have the right to not remember this horrible night. And so you had Sledge pull out a small marble. With that marble, he was then able to make everyone forget about what happened that night except for Sam's father and Lucas. And so that is why Sam does not remember the whole entire event. But also it proves that his uncle, that his father, they're not killers at all. But now we have to switch over to this Brazilian rainforest. And the reason why, because we're now picking up with the Damates Foundation once again. And of course, the leader of that foundation being Odysseus Indigo. Now, when it comes to Odysseus, we learn that he's currently holding on to, well, Rainfire. And so this leads into the next chapter where I'm going to briefly explain the idea of Rainfire, because he was a very cool character for X-Force comics for a good while there in the 1990s. You see, when it came to Rainfire, he kind of appeared out of nowhere, basically the new leader of the Mutant Liberation Front. And so we were kind of left to believe at first that this was a new character. Now, later on, we have learned that was not the case at all. That in reality, it was, well, Sunspot. Now, there's a good reason why Sunspot had technically turned evil, because of the real Rainfire. You see, there was this doctor, better known as Dr. Joshua, right? And when it came to Dr. Joshua, he was working on this very special kind of project. You see, there was this doctor known as Dr. Joshua. When it came to Dr. Joshua, what he did was he had created something called Project 19, a protoplasmic mutant symbiote being studied by him. Now, what he did was he also gave the DNA of Sunspot over to the actual being. And of course, that symbiote evolved into, well, another Sunspot. Here's the problem though, because this fake Sunspot, better known as a real Rainfire, had gained the knowledge and past of, well, Sunspot, but also had this mental connection. And so what you had this fake Sunspot do, the Rainfire character, begin to control the mind of the real Sunspot. And so for our heroes, they have believed for a brief moment that there was Sunspot being evil. But in reality, he was being controlled. Now, later on, the real Rainfire did appear and told the entire story, but our heroes won, defeating him, and we were left to believe that he'll be gone forever. Except what happened was that when it came to the idea of Odysseus, he had found another celestial gatherer, a celestial golem, but he wants to reactivate it. The only way to do that is, well, place the symbiote of Rainfire inside of it to reawaken this celestial gatherer, to basically use it to begin the process of bringing in a brand new species, a dominant species. Now, when it comes to Odysseus, he has no idea that Seline and Sunspot are both there at the moment right now, trying to figure out how to stop the whole entire plan from actually happening. Now, the problem is that when it comes to Seline and also Sunspot, they're then easily, well, founded by the Sword. Now, the Sword is a small group of villains who work for Odysseus. Now, when it comes to Seline, she's a very powerful sorceress, but the problem is that she's easily taken out by the different members of the Sword. Now, when it comes to Seline, 9 out of 10 times, she always has some kind of backup plan to a backup plan to the actual plan. So, like, knowing her getting captured alongside with Sunspot was only part of her plan in the first place. Now, in the past, we had talked a lot about Sledge, right? Now, for Sledge, again, he's a he is a deviant. Now, when it comes to Sledge, there's people out there who owe him, like, they basically owe him all the different deals that he has done for them. And so for Sledge in the past, he did run into Warpath, who did kind of put Warpath on the right path to figure out like who killed off his entire tribe. Now, when it comes to Sledge right now, you have X-Force going over to him. And the reason why, because again, Cannonball just learned that Sledge is the reason why that he had forgotten about what happened when it came to his father and his uncle burying a bunch of dead bodies. Now, as soon as they arrive at Sledge's home, we come to find out he's not alone. You have Arcadia there and also Ulysses. Now, for Ulysses, he is the brother to Odysseus. But when it comes to Arcadia, her and Danny Moonstar, they have switched powers recently. And so currently Moonstar right now, she's holding on the powers of Arcadia. Now for Sledge, he realized that this is the perfect time for everyone to come together because he now knows that Odysseus, again, the brother to Ulysses, has another celestial golem. And that right there could be a major problem. Now, when it comes to Seline, like I said earlier, the girl has a backup plan to literally the main plan. And so for Seline, it's her right now telling us that she wants Sunspot to rejoin the Hellfire Club. Now, technically, he did not join. His father did. But it's her saying, like, I want you to take his place in the Hellfire Club. Now, for Sunspot, it's an automatic hex no. And the reason why, because for Seline, well, the Hellfire Club, to be more exact, they had killed off Sunspot's first lover, his first girlfriend. And so it's him saying, like, I am not going to join an organization that turned my father evil, for one, but also two, killed off the woman I loved right in front of me. Now, for Seline, she's not going to give up because she really wants him to be part of the Hellfire Club. Now, with the idea of Seline literally asking Sunspot to join the Hellfire Club is working out perfectly for her because you do have X-Force arrive at the base of Odysseus, right? When they do arrive, they break out Seline and Sunspot. Now, with that happening, it's kind of like, okay, cool, they're free, but Sunspot is mad at X-Force because let's not forget, prior to the storyline, Sunspot got deported from the country. And so he's kind of like, I was at the airport. No one was there to say goodbye to me except for Domino. Now, for the rest of X-Force, they had no idea what was going on with Sunspot. They were going on these different adventures without him and also Domino. And so he's kind of like, no, you guys are really not really good friends to me because y'all were not there to say goodbye to me or even call me after the fact I was deported. Now, let's not forget, him and Meltdown, Boom Boom, they used to date, but they broke up recently. And then right after they broke up was when he got deported. Now, this leads into the ending of this chapter where we really do see, our heroes being confronted by Odysseus, but also the celestial golem as well. Now, they're trying to reactivate it, right? But as the battle goes on, you then have Seline being able to cast a spell on Rainfire, who's being used right now to reactivate the celestial golem. And with her doing that, she's now in control of the celestial golem. That's why I said she always has backup plans to literally the main plan. And so when it comes to Seline right now, with her controlling this powerful being that has the ability to evolve humans or de-evolve beings on planet Earth, it's all in her control. Now, while she was distracted, you have Danny Moonstar being able to use her quantum powers to get rid of the celestial golem. Now, that ticks off Seline a lot. And we do see her use one final attack to send our heroes into their own personal kinds of hell. Now, when it comes to Sunspot, when he wakes up in the beginning of the final chapter, is him kind of looking around and realizing that something is off because he's now really famous. He's now really popular. And so you have all these different people right now just looking at him, cheering him on. Now, for Sunspot, he already knows there's something off about this. He already knows this is not real. It's the idea of Seline right now making us pick reality up as a way to pull him into her plans. Because again, for Seline, she wants him to join the Hellfire Club. Now, again, for Sunspot, he will not join the Hellfire Club because of his father, but also they killed off the woman he loved when he first found out about his abilities. And so for Sunspot, it's kind of like, no, there's no way I'm going to join the Hellfire Club. Now, when it comes to Sunspot, you do have Seline show him like what's happening to the rest of the members of X-Force minus Danny Moonstar. So most of X-Force is right now going through this whole nightmare situation. They're all in their own personal hells. Now, for Seline, it's her still trying to persuade Sunspot to join the Hellfire Club, but it's not working. Now, when it comes to Sunspot, he realized he saw every other member of X-Force minus Danny Moonstar. And the reason why, because Danny Moonstar was the one who had once again ruined the plans of Seline. I want you guys to hold on to that right there. But when it comes to Sunspot, when he walks away to go help out the rest of X-Force, we learn who's also part of the Hellfire Club. We also learn that Blackheart is part of the Hellfire Club. That's pretty huge right there, the son of Mephisto. Now, we kind of get the idea that Seline and also Blackheart had made some kind of deal with one another. Now, that deal, we have no idea what it could possibly be, but it could be, well, something. And so when it comes to Seline, it's him telling her, you know what you have to do. You have to use the girl as a way to bring him back over to our side. But while you have the two of them talking to one another, you have Sunspot go out of his way to begin the process of saving other members of X-Force. Now, while that's going on, the question's still up in the air, like, where in the world is Danny Moonstar at? And so while you have Sunspot and the rest of X-Force being able to regroup with one another, when we do see Danny Moonstar, she's currently being studied by Blackheart. Now, this is pretty huge because at the very last second, when it comes to Blackheart trying to study Danny Moonstar, she is then saved by Hela. Now, this is a callback to when she was a Valkyrie. And so because she was a Valkyrie, a small part of her like DNA or whatever is now part Asgardian. And so for Asgardians, when you die, there's a chance you can go to hell with Hela controls. And so it's her saying, like, no matter what happens to her, you can't have her. She's mine. And so it's Hela saying, like, back the mess off right now because she belongs to me. And so basically frees Danny Moonstar. Now, once you do have her being able to rejoin the rest of X-Force, it does seem like everything should be okay, right? But you didn't have Seline and Blackheart confront Sunspot one more time to join the Hellfire Club. Now, they have a way to get him, the girl. Now, at first I thought they were talking about Meltdown. Do something to Boom Boom to kind of force his hand to join the Hellfire Club because they had just recently broken up. But as the story went on, I realized, oh no, they're talking about Juliana, who died a long time ago by a member of the Hellfire Club. And so for Sunspot, what happens next? He's confronted by her. It's Juliana. They're basically saying that they have the ability to bring her back to life. And once they do bring her back to life, he has to join the Hellfire Club. And he loved Juliana. So it's him saying like, okay, I see what you mean here. I see what I have to do. So the book does end on the note where you have X-Force leaving, but it's Sunspot right now rejoining the Hellfire Club because of Juliana. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over X-Force, we're going to go ahead and get into issue number 99. Now, for issue number 99, This is a massive callback to the early days of the New Mutants, and you'll see what I mean here in a moment, because when it comes to X-Force, they're currently fighting against the Demon Bear. Now, we have not covered the Demon Bear storyline, so just know it's a very interesting but also cool storyline that we need to cover. I want to say it was written by Chris Claremont when he was on the New Mutants title. But when it came to Demon Bear, its connection all came from one character, Dani Moonstar. You see, for Dani Moonstar, when she was a young girl, she would have this dream where basically, this demon bear would go out of its way to kill off her parents. Now, of course, that dream did supposedly come true when her parents left for a hunting trip and never came back. Now, for Dani Moonstar, when she grew up, she went over to the school of Charles Xavier. As we all know, for X-Force, they were originally the New Mutants, but when New Mutants got taken over by one particular writer, not say his name right now, you didn't have Marvel say, hey, we want to keep this guy on our roster. So you basically had Marvel cancel New Mutants and turn it into X-Force. Now, again, X-Force is just New Mutants with some new characters here and there. Now, with all that being said, for Cannonball and Moonstar, they fought against the Demon Bear in that prior storyline. And so for Dani Moonstar, one day while being at the school of Charles Xavier, she was once again attacked by the Demon Bear. Now, the Demon Bear did transport her and the rest of her team, the New Mutants back then, over to its dimension, better known as the Badlands. Now, once being inside the Badlands, you did have our heroes fight against the Demon Bear once again, and also other characters being controlled by the Demon Bear, like, for example, Tom Corsi. We've been seeing him lately over in Generation X. But when it came to Magic, I totally forgot about her character because she's been dead for a while in our coverage. She used her soul sword to cut the Demon Bear in half. Now, when she did that, of course, it brought back the parents of Dani Moonstar. We also learned the Dimensions kind of living off the Demon Bear. Now, once you had our heroes and Dani Moonstar parents also go back into their home reality, Earth, everything seemed normal again. But in recent storylines, the bear has returned, just popping up left and right out of nowhere, and for our heroes, they don't understand why. Now, when it comes to issue number 99, it's also being used as a way to set up future things to come down the road. Like, for example, the idea of Siryn. Because let's not forget, in an earlier storyline, Siryn got her throat cut. And so while throat got cut, she basically lost her vocal cords. And so with those being gone, she no longer has the ability to speak or the ability to use her power. So she has been staying with her aunt. Now, when her aunt kind of goes off with some other guy to see some kind of crazy book, you didn't have Siryn go into an antique store. Now, when she walks in, she finds this necklace, but the owner of the store quickly grabs the necklace and puts it around the neck of Siryn. With that happening, well, there's a huge flash, and that is it. Now, getting back over to the storyline involving Dani Moonstar and also, well, the rest of her team X-Force, we're also being reintroduced to Arcadia. Now, Arcadia was part of a massive story, not massive, but a storyline going on with the idea of like some deviant try to use her powers to bring in like a whole new species of people, right? Now, anyway, when it came to Arcadia and Dani Moonstar, they had switched powers. So right now, Moonstar has her reality warping abilities to a degree, or her quantum power, sorry. And so when it came to Arcadia, ever since she had switched powers with Dani Moonstar, she had also been seeing visions of the Demon Bear. So for her, she's kind of like, what in the world is going on here? Now, they truly believe it has to be because these two characters have switched power sets. But then out of nowhere, you had the Demon Bear grab both ladies and, well, swallow them both. But this leads over to, well, the Hellfire Club, because again, another quick reminder of what's going on with X-Force at this time. Because for Hellfire Club, Selene's now the official owner of the club, right? But also, she was able to get Roberto, of course, Sunspot, to join the Hellfire Club. Now, the only reason why our boy had joined the Hellfire Club is because she brought back supposedly Juliana, his first love, who had died a long time ago by the hands of the Hellfire Club. So she's kind of like, listen, I can give you Juliana back, but you have to rejoin the Hellfire Club. Now, when it comes to Danny Moonstar and also for Arcadia, things get a tad bit crazier because for our two heroes right now, they're now what seems to be in the other dimension where the demon bear comes from, better known as the Badlands. Now, while being inside the Badlands, they're now being confronted by different things that used to belong to them in the past. Like, for example, you find a doll, right? That doll does not belong to you. It belongs to your counterpart. So for Danny Moonstar, she finds this doll that belongs to Arcadia, but from Arcadia's childhood. The same thing goes for Arcadia. She finds Brightwing, the Pegasus that used to belong to Danny Moonstar in the past. And so it's kind of like, what in the world is going on here? But you didn't have the doll begin to speak to both Danny Moonstar and Arcadia, basically saying like, this demon bear is feeding off of you two guys right now, and that is a major problem. But as we get back over to, well, Earth, we see our hero still dealing with the demon bear. Now, while the battle goes on, we do see some people right now watching Boom Boom, and most likely they're going to try to recruit her in a later storyline. But right now, they're currently watching her and the rest of X-Force fighting against the demon bear. Now, as the battle goes on, you did have our heroes also be confronted by Risque. Now, when it comes to like Risque, I love her character. And the reason why, because to me personally, she brought in new life for Warpath. And let me explain. Because for Warpath, for a good while there, he was kind of in this weird will he, won't he game when it came to Siryn. Like, will he get with her or not? Now, of course, for Siryn, she kept saying like, no, I don't want you. But then like, when Risque appeared, she was kind of like, wait a second, I do want you. Don't leave me kind of game. Anyways, for Risque, even though technically at first she was not really in love with Warpath, she was kind of using him, playing mind games with him. Over time, she began to kind of like Warpath. Now the question is, why in the world is she here right now? And the problem is, we don't get our answer because while you have our heroes and Risque fighting against the demon bear, S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives. And S.H.I.E.L.D. says like, hey, this is now our battle right now. As a matter of fact, if you guys do anything at all, we'll bring you guys down as well. It's kind of like, wait a second, S.H.I.E.L.D., hold on, hold your horses here. But this kind of leads into the ending of this chapter because we do learn from the doll from Arcadia's past how the bear technically came back to life. You see, when the two ladies had switched powers, for Danny Moonstar, she now gained the powers of reality warping or quantum powers, right? And so with those powers, she was also able to reawoken the demon bear, kind of bringing it back to life, even though it was suddenly destroyed by magic a long time ago. And so with the bear now being back in the picture again, it has been feeding off both of the ladies, just left and right, their energy. And so it's it's the doll saying like, you have to get rid of that heart to get rid of the demon bear. Now, you have both girls beginning to use their powers together, right, to get rid of the demon bear. The problem is that at the end of this chapter, we're now confronted by 4 different Danny Moonstars from 4 different eras. And I kind of like this a lot. Like, for example, the first one, the New Mutants Day. The second one being when she was a Valkyrie in Asgard. The third one was like when she joined the Mutant Liberation Front, but kind of sickly working for S.H.I.E.L.D. as an undercover agent. And then her current era. And so it's kind of cool because her character has gone through a lot in this point, what, 20 years? Not 20 years. 15 years, 19 years since she's been around in Marvel Comics. I actually want to say it was 20 years. No. Almost 20 because they came in the early 1980s and we're not in 2003 yet. But anyways, though, for Danny Moonstar, we're seeing 4 different eras of her character by this point in Marvel Comics. And so this kind of leads us over to, well, issue number 100, the big issue for X-Force, because they had finally hit 100 issues. And I kind of realized that when it came to our coverage over X Factor, that we hit the issue, like 100 issue, a long time ago, right? And the same thing goes for Excalibur and like Uncanny X-Men 250 and 300. So it's kind of wild for us to hit X-Force 100 as we get into the year 2000, but also at the same time for X-Force, their book came out like 1991, I want to say. I could be wrong there. But anyways, getting into the 100 issue for X-Force. We have our heroes right now kind of wondering like, what in the world can they do here? Because now they're basically confronted by 4 different Danny Moonstars. But on top of that, they're now being confronted by the Queen of the Star Swords. Now, for this character right here, she is heavily connected to Arcadia. Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you right now, it is Arcadia. But you'll see what's gonna happen here and why she became the Queen of the Star Swords here in a moment. But right now, it's really our heroes just trying their best to fight against the 4 different Danny Moonstars, but also the Queen of the Star Swords. Now, for S.H.I.E.L.D., they're like completely wiped out in like 4 or 5 panels. But for the rest of our heroes right now, they're trying their best to figure out what is the right move to take here when it comes to, well, the Queen. Now, the battle does kind of end with our heroes losing, but also the Queen leaving with the 4 Danny Moonstars. Now, for Warpath and also Risque, they do find the real Danny Moonstar. Apparently, she was nearby, just completely knocked out. Now, for our heroes, they want to take her over to a nearby hospital, but she says, we don't have time for that. We got to find a way to stop the Queen, because the Queen is Arcadia. But the problem is right now, what in the world happened to make Arcadia become the Queen of the Star Swords? And to only make things even worse, you have the Queen build this random cathedral right in the middle of the city. And so when it comes to our heroes, once they do get back over the base of X-Force, it's really more than a Moonstar explaining like, what exactly happened. And she says it all happened because of Arcadia. You see, when it came to our 2 young ladies, when they were trying to reabsorb the energy that Demon Bear had took from them, Arcadia could not handle the energy that she was absorbing. And so with her reality warping abilities, her mind kind of fractured. And so with that, she began to believe that she was the Queen of the Star Swords. And the idea of the Queen of the Star Swords came from her childhood. You know how to go, guys. You know how it goes. You're a child and you kind of imagine all of these different things in the world, all right? You build a fake world around you to play in. And so when it came to Arcadia, she had built an imaginary world where the Queen of the Star Swords was an enemy. And but the thing was, she still had the power of reality warping. And so when it came to Arcadia, when she came to her trying to absorb the energy that the Demon Bear took from her, her mind fractured and made her believe that she is really the Queen of the Star Swords who is trying to take over, well, the world. And the problem is that right now, she has the power to technically do it. Now you also have Ulysses arrive. I'm not really going to sit down and try to explain much about his character in this video. Just know that at a young age, he took Arcadia in and tried his best to help her understand how to control her reality warping abilities. But now with him being there, it's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and get to the cathedral and try our best to bring her down. The problem is that once you have everyone get inside the cathedral, they're all completely separated from one another. Now, when it comes to Sunspot, he's not really part of the main storyline, like, at all. Like, his whole plot line involves a Hellfire Club for a later storyline. But again, let's not forget, he had rejoined the Hellfire Club only because Seline said, I can bring Juliana back to life. And she did. The problem is that she placed Juliana in someone else's body, but not being able to remember who she was. And so when she does see Sunspot, he does somewhat recognize her. He's kind of like, wait a second, you have her eyes, but it's not really her face, right? And so he's kind of confused at first, but kind of thinks this could be Juliana, but now he has a hard time explaining like how they may know one another. And so he just runs away. We also see that for Jennifer Kell, this sorceress, she's also trying to get involved to help X-Force out with this whole entire situation. So she does just walk by S.H.I.E.L.D. and get inside the cathedral to hopefully help our heroes out with this kind of, well, big moment. But this kind of begins the craziness of the storyline, because once you do have Danny Moonstar walk around the cathedral, she's then confronted by the doll we saw earlier in the last chapter that had belonged to Arcadia. And the doll is alive and well. But the doll said, like, Arcadia brought her to life and promised her that once everything is hers, she'll turn the doll into an actual girl. So the doll right now trying her best to only protect her master, Arcadia, and not really trying to help Danny Moonstar to find a way to stop all of this mess from continuing on. Now, the doll does tell Danny Moonstar, like, the rest of your team is worlds away. And what she means by that statement is that really they're just kind of facing different kinds of realities, but inside this cathedral. Like, for example, for Warpath and Risque, they're confronted by Pharaoh, right? Now, for Pharaoh, at first, kind of like, is she really here? But for Pharaoh, this one right here does not remember about the idea of cutting the throat of Siryn. And the reason why, because this Pharaoh comes from a different reality where she's still part of X-Force, but alongside with like Deadpool and Boom Boom, Sunspot, Siryn, Richter, other characters who've been gone or never did join X-Force in the first place. And it's kind of like, wait a second, they're right now facing a different reality version of X-Force right now. And the same thing goes for like Domino and also Jesse, because they're now being confronted by another reality version of the X-Men, but the X-Men are mostly new mutants who had grown up and watched the rest of the X-Men had died. Here is another catch. Most of the X-Men right now of this reality are people who had died, like Magic. And I want to say that guy in the front is Cypher. I could be wrong there. But it's the idea, this reality, the new mutants grew up, became the X-Men, and are now the last surviving members of the X-Men. And that trend kind of continues on a tad bit, because when we do switch back over to Danny Moonstar, she's being confronted by a dragon. Now, this dragon also comes from Arcadia's mind when she was a young girl, building up that fake reality, that imaginary world of hers. And so this dragon is technically Ulysses, who was changed into the dragon by Arcadia's reality warping abilities. Now, luckily Danny Moonstar, she is saved at the very last second by Cable. Now, there's a catch with this Cable, but we're not going to find out until the very end of this video. But now Cable's here to help out with this team to fight against Arcadia to bring reality back to normal again. We also see that for Cannonball and also for Boom Boom, they're also kind of in a different reality as well, where all the different members of X-Force, past and present, are now like mental patients. Now, it's very fast and quick kind of showing here, because once you are heroes on a doorway out of that whole mental hospital, they're now back in the cathedral once again. So it's kind of very small and quick. Now we do switch over to like Siryn, and for Siryn, let's not forget in the last chapter we saw her get this necklace, right? Well, when her aunt comes home to, just come home with groceries and everything, Siryn rushes out of the house. And the reason why, because that necklace has somebody else allowing them a chance to possess the body of Siryn and also heal her body as well, where now she's able to speak again. But you do have Siryn just fly away out of nowhere, now being possessed by some unknown, spirit. But this kind of leads into the big final battle for the entire storyline, because for our heroes, they do kind of battle against the 4 other Danny Moonstar that appeared at the end of the last chapter. But by the time you do have our heroes fighting against the different versions of these Danny Moonstars, it allowed them a chance to regroup with one another. And so with the entire team now being back together, for Danny Moonstar, what she does next is reabsorb the different counterparts of hers back to herself again. And with her doing that, she's now gaining more power. She's now back to her normal strength again. But the thing is, Danny Moonstar is the only person who may have the ability to bring down Arcadia and this cathedral around them. And so how the battle goes is that for Danny Moonstar, she is confronted by Arcadia, right? So you do have the two characters battling against one another, right? And so while they're battling against one another, for Danny Moonstar, what she does grabs Cable's weapon, the Scimitar. Now, for Cable, what usually happens is that he's able to channel his energy into the weapon to make it a more powerful weapon, right? And so when it comes to Cable, he's like, hey, Danny Moonstar, my weapon cannot take that much energy, but it's her right now trying to use that energy as a way to bring down Arcadia. Now, for Danny Moonstar, she still has one counterpart out there, the cosmic version of herself. And so this cosmic version of herself gets instructions from Jennifer Kell and also Man Thing to basically give her power over to our Danny Moonstar to give her the edge she needs to bring down Arcadia. And so with that extra energy, just like that, Arcadia is officially defeated by Danny Moonstar. The cathedral is completely destroyed. Now for Cable, this Cable right here was not even our real Cable. He came from a different reality where he did train X-Force up, but they all had died by, I want to say, Apocalypse. And so for Cable, he want to make sure this X-Force stayed alive and continue on with their mission. With our heroes right now, it does seem like everything is back to normal, but the question is, are they truly back in their own reality? This is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.